Chapter 8. The Final Tide. The cold mark on Lem's shoulder was an anchor, dragging him down into a sea of madness. It was a patch of dead flesh on his living body, a constant, physical testament to the ghost's power. He huddled on the saturated sofa, a shivering, dehydrated wreck, his body screaming for water he dared not drink. The spectral tide in his apartment had stopped rising, the dark brine sloshing gently against the legs of his furniture in a parody of a calm sea. But it was a liar's calm. In the murky depths, the faces of his silent jury still flickered, their accusing eyes never blinking, never looking away. He had lost all track of time. Hours bled into one another, measured only by the deepening thirst in his throat and the intensifying coals that emanated from the mark on his shoulder. His arrogance, his belief in his own superiority, his meticulous plans, they were all just driftwood now, meaningless debris floating on the impossible ocean that had consumed his life. He had wanted to awatow a memory. Instead, his entire reality had been deleted. A new sound began to cut through the quiet sloshing. It was a subtle shift at first, a deeper note in the water's voice. The gentle lapping grew stronger, more insistent. A current was forming. He watched, his exhausted mind struggling to comprehend, as a small leather-bound book slid off a submerged end table and was swept away, tumbling end over end in the murky flow. His fortress was not just flooded, it was being disassembled. The water began to rise. It was no longer a slow bleed. It rose with an unnatural speed, climbing the legs of the sofa with a hungry gurgle. The chill intensified. Soon, the cold brine was soaking through the cushions, pooling around him. A whimper escaped his cracked lips. He scrambled backwards, trying to climb onto the back of the sofa, his last pathetic perch of dry land. The water surged, a sudden swell that lifted the armchair and sent it crashing into the wall. The sheet covering the television was torn away by the current, revealing the blank black screen beneath, a perfect dead mirror. The water climbed, swallowing the sofa back, then the coffee table. It was at his waist now, heavy and brutally cold, its current pulling at him, trying to unbalance him. His feet slipped on the submerged cushions. He was going to drown. Here, in his own living room, 5 floors above the solid ground. Then, as suddenly as it began, the churning stopped. The water became unnaturally still, as smooth and dark as obsidian glass. The silence was absolute, heavier and more profound than any sound. The reflections of his victims vanished, replaced by a perfect dark mirror of the ceiling above. In the center of the room, the still water began to bulge upwards. It rose like a blister, a column of dark liquid ascending without a splash. A column-tip shape, the water running down its form in rivulets, coalescing into soaked trousers, a heavy cardigan, thin hair plastered to a scalp. Arthur Vance stood before him. He was no longer a reflection, no longer a specter standing on a distant ocean. He was here fully manifested, a solid thing of cold flesh and cosmic fury. He stood upon the water, his hollow black eyes fixed on Liam with an expression not of hatred but of finality. This was not the act of revenge, this was the signing of a death warrant. Liam opened his mouth to scream, but only a dry, rattling gasp came out. His body was paralyzed by a terror so complete it felt like a second skin. Arthur was not alone. To his right, the water stirred, and the hiker clawed his way to the surface, his face a mask of pale, calm accusation. To his left, the lone camper emerged, her form shimmering and indistinct, her eyes filled with a sad, terrible wisdom. One by one, from the depths of Lem's own living room, his jury assembled. The jogger, the boater, the man from the cliff, they all rose from the spectral sea, their waterlogged bodies forming a silent, inexorable circle around him. They were the tide, and it was coming in. They began to move, wading towards him through the chest-deep water, their movements slow, deliberate, and perfectly synchronized. They were the sand, Anmus hands from the beach, given form and purpose. No, Liam croaked, the word barely a whisper. He found a final, desperate spark of defiance. He was a hunter. He was the god. He flailed, trying to swim away, to fight back. His fist connected with the hiker's shoulder. But it was like punching a pillar of ice and stone. They didn't even slow him. A hand, colder than the water, colder than death itself, clamped down on his ankle. Then another on his wrist, a camper's hand, small and deceptively strong, tangled in his hair. Then a jolt of pure, agonizing cold shot through him as a familiar, wrinkled hand seized his left shoulder, right over the cold mark. The touch was a circuit completing, a final claim being made. Arthur's hollow eyes were inches from his own. They pulled him under. The world dissolved into a maelstrom of green, murky chaos and crushing pressure. His desperate struggles were useless against their combined strength. They were a legion, powered by his own sins. The burning in his lungs began instantly, a familiar, agonizing fire he had only inflicted, never felt. He thrashed, his vision blurring, dark spots exploding behind his eyes. He was drowning. He was experiencing the exact horror he had bestowed upon Arthur, but this was no quiet, solitary end. This was a communal execution. As his life faded, he saw their faces surrounding him, a ring of silent accusers in the dark water. The hiker, the camper, all of them. And in the center, holding him fast, was Arthur Vance, his expression unchanging, his hollow eyes the last thing Liam would ever see. They were not just killing him, they were dragging his soul down with them into the cold, dark, watery hell he had built for them, a tomb made from his own living room. His final silent scream was a plume of wasted air. The last of the light vanished, the cold consumed him. The final tide had come, and it had washed him away forever.